Well, shalom, beloved. Revelation chapter 11, roughly page 1206 in the scriptures. Strongly recommend reading all of this with your own eyeballs, and if you're unaware where we are in the timeline of Revelation, go back and watch the earlier videos, because there's too much here to do a recap every time we start a video. There's a lot going on in this book. It is chock full of imagery and prophecy and cross-reference to the Old Testament and to the New. So, Revelation chapter 11, and a reed, this is John speaking, and a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger stood, saying, Rise, and measure the dwelling place of Elohim, and the slaughter place, and those worshipping in it. I'm going to read a little bit, and then we're going to come back, because there's a lot of meat. And we'll probably read to 6 and then come back. And a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger stood, saying, Rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim, and the slaughter place, and those worshipping in it. But cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations. And they shall trample the set-apart city underfoot for 42 months, 3.5 years. And I shall give unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clad in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees, and the 2 lampstands that are standing before Elohim of the earth. And if anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out of their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if anyone wishes to harm them, he has to be killed in that way. These possess authority to shut the heaven so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. And they possess authority over waters to turn them to blood and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they wish. So, let us begin again. And a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger said, stood, saying, Rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim, and the slaughter place, and those worshipping in it. So, to measure means more than just to bust your tape measure out. Take a look. The Father measures us, and it says that he searches out our inward parts. And other translations have it as your kidneys, right? Your inward parts. What's the disposition of your inward parts? What's your heart set? Or are you just going through the motions, or do you actually love Yah with everything you have? So take stock. He wants John to take stock of the dwelling place of Elohim. Now again, here we are in the New Testament with John having a vision of what is to come. And look at, yet again, the overwhelming temple imagery. Completely does away with the concept that this, the law was nailed to the cross. We don't have to do that anymore. Blah, blah, blah. All that falsehood. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Go read that if you disagree with me. And frankly, I don't care if you disagree with me. We don't have enough time to argue about whether or not you disagree with me. These videos are for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. A remnant is not 2 billion people. Let me repeat. A remnant is not 2 billion people, as we're going to see with this measuring. So John is measuring the dwelling place of Elohim, the temple, and the slaughter place, and those worshipping in it. He's taking stock of them. But cast out the court, which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given up to the nations, and they shall trample the set-apart city, Jerusalem, underfoot 42 months. So this measuring is Ezekiel 40 imagery. Recommend you go read Ezekiel 40. We don't have time to do that today. but in the book of Ezekiel, and I've told you before, if you don't understand the Old Testament and the Torah, you have no chance of understanding the New Testament and Revelation. So Ezekiel 40, he measures everything, all of it, with an angel at the command of Yah. Almost like you picking up what I'm putting down here. There's some parallels. But cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations. Now, if you know anything about the temple, you know that there was a courtyard outside of the temple, and the tabernacle, the tent of appointment, when the children of Israel were in their exodus and walking in the wilderness for 40 years. There was a courtyard outside of there, and outside of the tabernacle, the tent of appointment, where Moshe and the high priest Aaron met with Yah, and where the Holy of Holies was, the Ark of the Covenant. Outside of that was a courtyard, and in that courtyard was the slaughter place, where offerings were made. And so we're going to cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations. Those nations, to my mind, to my understanding of how the temple system was set up, they're there for the slaughter. If you read Revelation 19, they get slaughtered by who? The high priest, Yeshua. I know, there is no hippy-dippy Jesus. There is no peace, love, and prosperity gospel Jesus. That doesn't exist biblically. Especially when you read Revelation 19, which we will when we get there. So this courtyard is where the slaughter place is, and it's filled with the nations. And Yah saying, don't even bother measuring those people. Don't search their inward parts. I know what's up with them. And so again, there's a clear delineation here between Israel, the Father's chosen people, Genesis 32, which you as a Gentile believer are grafted into, Romans 11:16, which means 1 Peter 2:21, you should be doing what Messiah did, which was Matthew 5:17, embodying the Torah. And again, I don't have time to apologetics you into understanding here. You need to do your own research. So don't bother measuring the courtyard, because it's been given to the nations. And they, the nations, are going to trample the set-apart city, Jerusalem. So circles within circles within circles. We have the dwelling place in the center. Then we have the courtyard filled by the nations, which are given up for the slaughter. And then you have Jerusalem outside of that, right? Think of like a bullseye target. The center of the target is the temple. The 1 ring out from there, the 9 ring out from there is the courtyard. That 8 ring out from there is Jerusalem. The 7 ring out from there is everything else. Zion, if you will. And so outside the 8 ring, right, the set-apart city, Jerusalem, is going to be trampled underfoot for 42 months. Some people say this is already happening. I disagree. Because if we look at the timeline here, and I'm a biblical literalist, what does it say? It means what it says, right? To the best of our ability, that is the blade that we should use to cut through the nonsense of biblical interpretation. As much as we can, even when dealing with prophecy, what does it say? Not what I think it says, not what you think it says, not what Rabbi Chaim ben Shmuel said, or Pastor Johnson said, or Bishop, or Rabbi, or, whatever, the Pope, don't care. What does the book say? And it amazes me how many people are constitutional literalists. Well, shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. But when it comes to the Bible, they're pick and choosers. They make their own a la carte doctrine that will get them smoked at the end of an age. The Father explicitly says, do not add or take away from the word of this law. Yeshua backs that up. Yeshua in Revelation 22. Let's see. Yep, 22:18. 3 verses away from the last word in this Bible. For I witness to everyone hearing the words of prophecy in this book, if anyone adds to them, Elohim shall add to him the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, all this is Torah, by the way, Elohim shall take away his part from the book of life, and out of the set-apart city which are written in this book. Do not add or take away from. Okay? So what does it say? So here we also have this imagery of wheat versus chaff, separation. Separating the sheep from the goats, especially when you think of the slaughter place imagery in the courtyard. So those who are in the dwelling place of Elohim and are worshiping in it are being, and it says the slaughter place, the dwelling place of Elohim and the slaughter place and those worshiping in it. Well, in the dwelling place of Elohim, in the tabernacle, in the tent, was what was called the slaughter place of incense, or the altar of incense. And that represents the prayers that are going up. In the courtyard was the slaughter place for animals, the altar for animals. And so inside the tent, dwelling with Yah, those people, measure them, count them, John. Outside the tent in the courtyard, that's been given to the nations. Don't count them, don't even bother. So this is a wheat versus chaff issue here. And if you think about Isaiah 29:13 for context, Isaiah 29:13. And Yahweh says, because this people have drawn near with its mouth, they've drawn near, they're in the courtyard with their mouth, and it's with their lips they have esteemed me, they've given me glory, and has kept its heart far from me. They're in the courtyard, they're not in the temple though. So they're saying the right things, but their heart's not in it. And has kept their heart far from me, and their fear of me has become a command of men that is taught. They are there to check the box, not because they want to be there. It's the same rebuke that Messiah gives the Pharisees for not ritually washing his hands in Matthew chapter 15, that you have nullified the commands of Elohim with the doctrines of men. That's why they are there, this courtyard. So John's not even going to count those people. Yah doesn't need to search their inward parts. He knows what's up. And by the way, they're in the courtyard, which is where the slaughter place is. Got a plan for them. The high priest is going to make an offering, Revelation 19. So verse 3, Revelation 11:3, and I shall give unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clad in sackcloth, 3.5 years. These are the 2 olive trees, which is Zechariah 4 verse 3 imagery. And very clearly, the 2 sticks, the 2 branches, the 2 olive trees, this is Israel and Judah coming back together. If we look at the renewed covenant in Hebrews chapter 8, the renewed covenant in the New Testament in the book of Hebrews chapter 8, verses 6 through 13, which is so new that it's taken from the Old Testament book of prophecy of Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu. And I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. That's who the renewed covenant is with. And so if you're a Gentile believer in Messiah, you are grafted into the tree of life, which is Israel, Romans 11:16. And so you're supposed to do the things. You're supposed to walk in Yah's ways, not be a heathen Gentile paganist, which unfortunately billions of people are today while claiming the name of Mashiach. So these two witnesses, these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that are standing before Elohim on the earth. And if anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out of their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if anyone wishes to harm them, he has to be killed in that way. I think fire is literally going to come from their mouth, because that would be undeniable. And that's also what the word says. And if you're one of those people who's like, man, that could never happen, I think that your depth of belief is shallow. These 2 witnesses possess authority to shut the heavens so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. Who do we know from the Bible shut the heavens for 3.5 years? Anybody? Flip with me to 1 Kings 17. 1 Kings 17. And Eliyahu, Elijah, the Tishbite, of the inhabitants of Gilead, said to Ahab, As Yahweh Elohim of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be no dew or rain in these years, except at my word. Elijah. Remember, Elijah didn't die. He was taken up in a whirlwind. That's in 2 Kings something. And when he's taken up in a whirlwind, Elisha, his 2IC, goes with him. And he's like, hey man, I want a double portion of your spirit. And Elijah says, if you have the cojones to stay with me when Yah takes me up, you can have a double portion of my spirit. And Elisha goes with him, and he picks up the mantle of Elijah. It's interesting, at one point he has to cross a river, and he smacks the river with the mantle of Elijah, and the waters part. He walks across on dry land, hearkening back to Moshe. Yeah, Elijah, the servant of Yah, who killed righteously 400 false prophets at the Wadi Kidron. Because the Spirit of Yah was upon him. The Holy Spirit was on him. Yeah, that guy. Biblical badass. These possess authority to shut the heavens so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. And they possess authority over waters to turn them to blood and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they wish. Who does that sound like? Moshe. Now some people will say, and we don't definitively know, so there's almost no point in arguing it, other than for interest. Some people will say that these two witnesses are Elijah and Enoch. Enoch also didn't die. He lived 365 days. He was found to be completely righteous in his being and his soul by Yah, and he was taken up by Yah. I think it's Moshe and Elijah because Enoch did not turn waters to blood and did not put plagues upon the earth. Moshe, by the hand of Yah, did. And so if we're just looking at the pattern of behavior here, this looks a lot more like Elijah and Moshe than it does, to me, Elijah and Enoch. That being said, we don't know. However, if you flip a few pages back to Jude 1, verse 9. Jude 1, verse 9. But Michael, the chief messenger, the chief angel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moshe, presumed not to bring against him a blasphemous accusation, but said, Yahweh rebuke you. What? Where do we get a story in the Bible about Michael fighting with Satan over the body of Moshe? The answer is, unfortunately today, in our 66 canonized books of the Bible, we don't. But in the Apocrypha, we do. Jubilees. Michael and the devil fought for 3 days over the body of Moshe. I think that at some point, I think the enemy understood that at some point, that body is going to be important to Yah, because he's going to be coming back to earth. No body not coming back. Maybe. Asterisk. Depends on who you are and what you believe, right? But the body of Moshe was so important that Michael, the chief messenger, the archangel, came to earth to do battle with Hasatan, the Nahash, the enemy, that serpent of old, for 3 days, to capture the body of Moshe, to bring it to Yah. And the Yehudim, the Jews, have an oral tradition that Yah himself buried Moshe. Why? Well, keeping a finger stuck at Revelation chapter 11, flip to Matthew, verse 17, or Matthew chapter 17. Matthew 17. And after 6 days, Yeshua took Peter and James, Jacob, and John, Yochanan, his brother, and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he, Yeshua, was transformed before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became white as light. And see, Moshe and Eliyahu, Moses and Elijah, appeared to them, talking with him. Now, there's deeper implications here. On the Mount of Transfiguration here with Yeshua, what do we have the embodiment of? Echad, in one place, at one time, four-dimensional space-time. We have the Torah, Moshe, the prophets, Eliyahu, and the resurrection, Yeshua HaMashiach. The Torah, the prophets, the resurrection. All of this, I believe. All of this we're commanded to believe. All of this, the fullness of understanding. Revelation 14:12. Here's the endurance of the saints, those that have a testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach and keep the commands. Endurance, Elijah. Testimony, Yeshua. Commands, Moshe. The Torah and the prophets and the resurrection. Here on the Mount of Transfiguration. Also, depending on which gospel story you read, when Miriam comes to the tomb, there are two angels there. Two men shining as white light. Well, we see in Matt chapter 17, that there's two men with Yeshua shining as light, and it's Moshe and Elijah. And so I think, and this is not me preaching or prophesying, I think these two guys are Elijah and Moshe. Also, Moshe, I believe, was well aware of Yeshua. And proof of that, still holding a finger in Revelation 11, you can go to Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18, verse 15. Yahweh, this is Moshe speaking. It's such good stuff. Like you almost don't even know where to start. Yahweh your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brothers. Listen to him. Capital P, prophet, Yeshua. And if you don't like the word prophet in regard to Yeshua, in regard to Jesus, you can be a prophet and other things as well, right? It's not a descriptor of the entirety of his being here on earth. But you could also, proof text there, go to Luke 24, verse 19. And he, Yeshua, said to them, what? And they said to him, concerning Yeshua of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before Elohim and all the people. So his own apostles considered him a prophet, regardless of whether or not you like that terminology for who Yeshua was and is. That's what he was considered by Moshe and by the apostles. So now that we've briefly delved into that rabbit trail, let's go back to Revelation 11, verse 7. And when they, the two prophets, have ended their witness, the beast coming up out of the pit of the deep shall fight against them and overcome them and kill them. So epic rap battle between the beast and the two prophets. I don't know if you can hear, but my cows are hungry over there. They're talking. And their dead bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Mitzrayim, where also our master was impaled. And so this great city, the set-apart city, which is being trampled underfoot, which is now spiritually being called Sodom and Mitzrayim, where also our master was impaled. So we got clues here. This is Jerusalem. But at this point, because of this trampling underfoot by these nations, it's now spiritually Sodom and Egypt. Yeah, so it's in a bad way here. And some of the peoples and the tribes and the tongues of the nations see their dead bodies for 3.5 days. A day is a year and a year is a day, right? They prophesy for 1,260 days, 3.5 years. They lay dead for 3.5 days. A day to a year to a day. And not allow their bodies to be placed into tombs. And those dwelling on the earth rejoice over them and exult. And they shall send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tortured those dwelling on the earth. There's going to be a dead prophets party. The world is going to rejoice. The nations are going to rejoice that these two men of Elohim have been killed. And after 3.5 days, a spirit of life from Elohim entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. Now remember, Lazarus was dead 4 days. And Yeshua was like, Lazarus, arise. And Lazarus arose. 3.5 days, ain't nothing. Ain't nothing for Yah. And after 3.5 days, a spirit of life from Elohim entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from the heavens saying to them, come up here. And they went up into the heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. Now again, Moshe was with Yah in the cloud on the mountain, and Elijah was taken up in a whirlwind. So, not harping on this. I just personally believe that it's Moshe and Elijah. And in that hour, Matthew 24 imagery coming here. And in that hour there came to be a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. And in the earthquake 7,000 men were killed. 7 being the number of spiritual completion on earth, spiritual perfection on earth. Because 4 is the earth, 4 corners of the earth, and 3 is the number of spiritual perfection. So 3 and 7 jammed together, you get spiritual perfection on earth, right? And so this is a perfect judgment. And 1,000 in Hebrew, 1,000 is like a million. It's like a cajillion, right? When you say there's 1,000, 1,000 is something in Hebrew nomenclature is like all the. Man, how many camp chairs you got, Bear? I don't know, 1,000? See what I mean? So this 7,000 is like a perfect judgment from Yah upon the earth to the myriads. And the earthquake, 7,000. And also, getting back to what I said earlier, I also think it's literally 7,000. But for those that have eyes to see and ears to understand, ears to hear, right? We get it. That number 7,000, which is a literal number of 7,000 people killed, represents this perfect judgment by Yah on the earth to the myriads. And in the earthquake 7,000 men were killed, and the rest became afraid and gave glory, esteem to Elohim of the heaven. The second woe is past, and see, the third woe is coming speedily. And the 7th messenger sounded, and there came to be loud voices in the heavens, saying, the reign of this world has become the reign of our master, and his Messiah, Mashiach, and he shall reign forever and ever. And so now there's a transitionary period coming here. The reign of this world, the beast and the beast system, and the Antichrist, and the false prophet, and the one world governance, and the oppression of the saints. We are now transitioning into the reign of Messiah. It's kicking off, sweetheart. And the 24 elders sitting before Elohim on their thrones fell on their faces and worshipped Elohim, saying, we give thanks, we give you thanks, O Yahweh El Shaddai, the one who is and who was and who is coming, because you have taken your great power and reigned. And we've talked again about these 24 elders. 12 tribes of Israel, minus Dan. Dan did whoring and abominations. Dan has separated himself from Yah. So one elder from each of the tribes. We've seen this previously in Revelation, but also one of these elders each represents the 12 apostles, right? Minus Judas plus Shaul of Tarsus. So, or Yehuda. Luke 22. Go to Luke 22. Luke 22, verse 29. Yeshua speaking. And I covenant for you as my Father covenanted for me a reign, a kingdom, to eat and drink. He's speaking to his apostles. This is Yeshua speaking to his apostles. And I covenant for you, I make an agreement with you, a contract with you, as my Father covenanted for me a reign, a kingdom, to eat and drink at my table in my reign, and to sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. You think he meant it when he said it? It sure looks like he does over here in Revelation 11. And the 24 elders sitting before Elohim on their thrones fell on their faces and worshipped Elohim, saying, we give you thanks, O Yahweh El Shaddai, the one who is and who was and who is coming, because you have taken your great power and reigned, and the nations were enraged, and your wrath has come. This is Psalms 2, by the way. Worth a read, looking at what Yah's wrath and the enraged nations look like. Your wrath has come, and the time of the dead to be judged, and to give the reward to your servants the prophets, and to the set-apart ones. What are the set-apart ones? Revelation 14:12. Those that have a testimony of Yeshua HaMashiach and keep the commands. Not either or, both. The set-apart ones, and to those who fear your name, small and great, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. Now, the dead to be judged. Flip to Daniel 12. Daniel 12, verse 2. We read Daniel 12 previously in context of Revelation because it applies. Start at verse 1. Now at that time, Michael, the same chief messenger, the same archangel who fought with Satan over the body of Moshe, at that time Michael shall stand up, the great head who is standing over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of distress such as never was since there was a nation until that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Same book that Yeshua talks about in Revelation chapter 22. Same book that Moshe talks about, written in the book of life. All these people written in your book. Why? Why is John searching the temple, searching the inward parts of the people who are in there? Writing names in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth wake up, some to everlasting life, and some to reproaches, everlasting abhorrence. And those who have insight shall shine like brightness of the expanse, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So, the resurrection. In Christendom, we have a messed up understanding of the resurrection. Yeshua was the first fruits of the resurrection. He is risen. He is risen indeed. And if we believe in Jesus, we will be risen too. Newsflash, everybody rises. The just and the unjust, the righteous and the unrighteous. Because all will be judged. Every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall confess. It's after you're risen. Right here, Daniel 12. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth wake up, some to everlasting life, and some to reproaches, everlasting abhorrence, separating the wheat from the chaff, the judgment. And I could go deep into that. But every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess. And those that have Yeshua as Messiah, as mediator, as intercessor, who are covered by the blood, and who are walking in the Father's ways. Matthew 19:17, if you wish to enter into life, guard the commands. Go forward a few pages, right here, Revelation 22, verse 12, Yeshua speaking, and see, I am coming speedily, and my reward is with me to give to each according to his work. Judgment, to give to each according to his work. I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those doing his, Yahweh's commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. All flesh shall confess. All flesh shall bow and bend the knee and cower before Yahuwah. Verse 18, and the nations were enraged, and your wrath has come. Behold, I come speedily to give to each man according to his works. And your wrath has come, and the time of the dead to be judged, and to give the reward to your servants, to give to each man according to his works. To your servants, the prophets and the set apart ones. So who's his servants? The prophets and the set apart ones. And to those who fear your name, small and great, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. And the dwelling place of Elohim. More temple imagery here in the New Testament, the last book of the New Testament. We are 11 chapters from the end of the book, after the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua HaMashiach. And what do we have here? More temple imagery. So quit saying it was nailed to the cross. It was not. It never was. Doctrines and dogmas of men were nailed to the cross, which, by the way, was a stake. Staros. Do your homework. False doctrine. Bad teaching. Doctrines and dogmas of men were nailed to the stake, not Yah's perfect law. And the dwelling place of Elohim was opened in the heavens, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his dwelling place. And there came to be lightnings and voices and thunders and an earthquake and great hail. Revelation chapter 11, the final story in an eternal love letter from the creator of the universe to his chosen people. And gosh dang, I hope you're paying attention and seeking the Father's face and reading his word and putting your knees in the dirt and your face on the ground and praying until stuff just runs out of your face and submitting to him and being washed in the blood of the Son so that you might live unto righteousness, which is blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah and being led by the Ruach HaKodesh and not some other worldly spirit, and seeking to observe the two prime directives, General Orders 1 and 2. Love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. While constantly, 1 Peter 2:21, walking as Messiah walked, back to Elohim, so that you can be a servant of Elohim, so that you might be sealed in the forehead, so that when John, with his measuring rod, searches your inward parts, you are in the dwelling place of Elohim, which means you are in covenant, you are tabernacled with him, you are under his covering literally, and you are found righteous at that point, that you are not outside in the courtyard, standing next to the slaughter place, ready to be a burnt offering. Bless y'all. Shalom.